Hi, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins, and welcome to Financial Lovemaking, where we talk about love, life, money, and everything in between. I'm here with my buddy partner and co-host, the Ebony Magazine Entertainment Director, Miss S. Tia Brown. How you doing today, Tia?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good. You look happy, and despite the fact that you're in the middle of a snowstorm.
That's right. Listen, I am a native New Yorker, Brooklyn to the fullest, and we're used to snow out here. So,
Wait, no, sorry,
that's BX, okay?
My bad. What's Brooklyn? What does Brooklyn do?
I don't know if Brooklyn has a sign.
Oh, I get it. I totally messed that up. You know, I was thinking about the K, but I was like, wait, this isn't the K, this is an X. But you know what? I like the BX too. I love the Bronx. I've been in the Bronx. I've been to Brooklyn. Those are extraordinary communities. I mean, they're cities within themselves. I mean,
Absolutely.
You're
very Eurocentric. If you live in New York City, you know that there's a distinct difference between being from Manhattan, being from Brooklyn, being from the Bronx, from Queens, from Long Island, even from Harlem. And Harlem is part of Manhattan. A lot of people speak about Harlem as if it's its own city, and it's actually an area, and that's part of Manhattan. So, you know, it is what it is.
Yeah, a lot of people who don't know New York, who've never been there or have only been there once or twice, they really think New York is just all New York. So even when I moved to Syracuse, which is upstate New York, people say, "Oh, well, right?" They'd say, "What's it like in New York City?" And I'd say, "Well, you know, that's not New York City." That's
like, you get no cred being from places like Syracuse, Buffalo, Albany. I'm not hating.
Hey, I get plenty of cred. I create my own cred. I got a cred kitchen back up in here where I just make cred sandwiches all day long. Thank you very much.
And this is why we love the nerds. They say stuff like cred sandwiches.
Cred cookies, cred shrimp. Anyway.
Love yourself. And speaking of self-love, our topic for today is extremely interesting because it's about a woman who loves herself so much she decided to marry herself at the beginning of this year. Her name is Yasmin Eleby. She's a 40-year-old woman from Texas, and she had a huge, lavish wedding ceremony for herself to marry herself because she's 40 years old and she hasn't found her ideal mate yet. Boyce, what do you think about that? 10 bridesmaids, 3 ministers, tons of guests, food, the whole shebang, all for herself.
Well, that reminds me of what is now probably the second weirdest marriage story I've ever heard. Since it's now the title has now been taken by this one. I remember a long time ago there was a hairstylist who made a joke in the salon. It's kind of a risque joke, but she said, you know what? She said, I think I'm just gonna marry my vibrator. She said one day y'all gonna get a picture of my vibrator wearing a tux, and she said that's. And up until 3 minutes ago, that was the weirdest and the funniest marriage story I've ever heard.
Well,
this is now number one. We have a new champion.
You know what? I think the vibrator is still number one. I will say Eleby's story is the most expensive story that I've heard. Mm-hmm. You know, a lot of people are praising her, saying, you know, it's so important that people devote love and affection to themselves. I think it's great to have a party. But a wedding is a rite of passage between two individuals. So the fact that you're saying that, you know, I'm 40 and I haven't had a wedding yet, to me is very different than saying I'm 40 and I haven't met the person who I love and want to marry. Apples and oranges. So you have a party, but this just feeds into the whole fantasy that every woman has to have her princess-like wedding in order to have her happily ever after. And it's really not about that. After this big party, which is what it wasn't a wedding, you are still going to have the need to find a companion or a desire to find a companion. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I just think it's very important for us not to confuse the financial aspect and the big celebratory aspect with the nuts and bolts of a marriage, which is working together with someone to have your happily ever after.
Right. Well, you know, I mean, if you think about our society, which is increasingly hell-bent toward instant gratification, you see more and more people who are incredibly fascinated with starting things, but not all that excited about finishing things. So you see a lot of men, for example, who they know how to make a baby all day long. They love the act of making a child, but when it comes to the act of actually raising a child to the age of 18, they don't want to do that. And then you see on the female side, you see women that they love the act of getting married. They fantasize about the ceremony and the beautiful wedding day and all that stuff. But when it comes to the nuts and bolts of actually making a marriage work with another human being, not just with yourself, you don't really see people as devoted to that part of the task as they are to the whole big bang of coming together, getting married. And I think it shows itself in the divorce rates. And you actually have some people that do become these sort of serial ceremonialists, if you will, that they get married over and over and over and over and over again because they're so fascinated with the process, but not at all fascinated with the hard work that comes afterwards.
Right. The act of being married. So I hate to, and I will not vilify someone for being single, because you can be single for so many different reasons. It can be that you actually just haven't met the person who's willing to do the work to move to the next level in terms of commitment and relationship building. But I would have said that this money might have been better invested in hiring a couple of matchmakers, right? Let me throw it out there, to help connect with some more people instead of just having this party to celebrate you. A wedding by yourself is nothing more than a birthday party. Right?
Right.
But if you're really looking to have a union, it's about doing some of the legwork to make yourself a better partner, or possibly get you closer to meeting those people. So I say, if you're single, if there's some issues you think you might need to work through, invest in some therapy. Again, it may not be your fault, but we are all culpable in some ways, and we all have habits that we can work on. And the second thing I would say is try matchmakers. I did a great story about matchmakers in Ebony in the October issue, and it was really, really fun to meet different types of people that I normally would not have met. What do you think, boys?
I think that there's obviously a psychiatric issue going on here with this woman, and I can't do the armchair analysis, but here's the thing. I think it's one thing for you to say, I love myself. And I think that most people can respect that, right? And you say, look, I've tried the relationship thing. It isn't quite working the way I wanted it to. But I love myself and I'm here for myself. And I think people understand that. But when you engage in an actual extravagant ceremony that you ask other people to participate in, that you spend lots of money on, number one, it does say that you are, as you mentioned, you're caught up in the ceremony of it all more so than the actual work it takes to get along with another person, not just yourself. But then two, it kind of says that it might reek of narcissism. Right? You think about that. I am so in love with myself that I'm going to hold this extravagant, expensive ceremony that you're all going to be invited to, where I openly and repeatedly declare my everlasting love for me. Me. And to me, if that's the case, then matchmaking ain't gonna make it right. We can match you up with 1,000 people, but you're not going to get along with anybody because you love yourself so much that you don't have the capacity to love another human being.
So I won't say that she's necessarily a narcissist. Like you said, we don't know her enough to make that type of determination. But for a lot of the viewers out there, I won't just say ladies, which was my initial inclination. There was an episode on Sex and the City back in the day when they talk about there's certain rites of passages for women that happen by a certain time period in your life, marriage being one of them. And for women, as you get, specifically, I would say past 35, it becomes more challenging when you're constantly giving baby showers, weddings for other people, and you feel like, when is it my turn? Right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be from a perspective of, oh, I'm so great, everybody should adore me. Right? It may also just be like, when is it my turn? It can be from a perspective of hurt as well. I want to throw it out there. There's absolutely nothing wrong with being single. Some people may not find that person to walk every step, for that happily ever after, and some people will. Some people might find people for part of the way. So everybody's journey is individualized, and accepting that is a huge part of finding your personal happiness. Again, my biggest issue is that a wedding is specifically for the union of two people. A party can celebrate anything. So the fact that she has to deem this a wedding, to me, is my biggest concern.
I agree. I mean, a wedding ceremony is the union, as you mentioned, the union of two people. But you've even had, other weird weddings. You've had people marry their dog and stuff like that. And which,
another being.
Right there. Right. At least you're bonding yourself with another living thing. And so it's a union between two people, and then after that there's the work of kind of making the marriage work. You're building something together, and the question is, what's the conversion? What does that mean when you're doing that with yourself? Like,
Right.
what do you say? I mean, we know that you can do the honeymoon by yourself. That's easy. You can even have
What?
you can,
That's not a honeymoon. That's a vacation.
it might be, but you can call it a honeymoon. Fine, I don't have a problem with that. And then you can even have sex with yourself. People do it. It happens. I'm not here to judge,
Oh,
or there's nothing to really say about that. But then it's like, okay, so then what's special about this union? Like, what is it about being married to you that is that makes it different from just being you, from being with
and I
you?
think the question is, what about the ceremony makes you feel better, right? Because like we're saying, it is just a party. So what happens after the ceremony in terms of how you feel about yourself? You're still single, having hoped to find someone to work with, to grow with, to practice the art of being with, and that hasn't happened. So
That's the
it's
million
right.
dollar. Well, that's the million dollar question, right? Like, if she meets a great man that she wants to be with, does that mean she has to divorce herself before she can marry him? Like, we're in new territory here, right? We first
Right.
last year the issue was gay marriage. Now the new issue might be political, or sorry, self marriage, right? That might be the new
Yourself.
political issue.
My advice, if you are hoping to be married by a certain point in your life and it doesn't happen, it's okay to feel sad and disappointed about that. And it's okay to have a great party for yourself to celebrate you and to be buoyed by your friends, and to also say that I still want to meet someone and continue that search. Instead of spending the money on a wedding to yourself, invest in some other options to help you meet your Mr. or Mrs. Right. Matchmaking, online dating, talking to more friends and family members, and just going out and enjoying yourself, having a good time, doing the things you love to do, whether it's bowling, whether it's, partying, whether it's golfing. And that person will come when the time is right. You have to believe. But having a wedding for yourself, I just can't co-sign on. And I wish Yasmin Eleby the best. And I hope that her happiness continues to come and grow. And she understands that the wedding is nothing. The wedding really doesn't mean anything. It's about the art of being with yourself and being with a partner. That's all I have to say.
And I hope that her spouse never leaves her.
So we voice hopes that she never leaves herself.
Right.
Hear your thoughts on this topic. It's a
Yes.
little unique. Would you marry yourself if you turned 40 or 35 or whatever magic number in your head was the time period in which you assume that you would be married by or want to be married by? Would you marry yourself? Let us know.
Bye bye.
Out.